Friday already. Can't believe we've made it to the end of yet another week. Load up that chat room, everybody. Jimmy's in the room. Kevin's in the room. Who else is in the room? A bunch of other people are going to join us today. I know they will. And if this is your first time, welcome. Finally Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers, VIP and Patreon members from around the world. You can show your support for everything we do at Major Spoilers and get access to a bunch of other cool things by becoming a member today. Just go check it out. See all the cool things we have to offer you. It can be found at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Well, happy Friday to you. I'm glad that you are here to celebrate the end of yet another week. Seems like a really long week, even though we had, was this a 4-day week that we had this week with Memorial Day last Monday? Just feels like this week just dragged and dragged and dragged. But hey, we're here, and it's finally Friday, and you're here too, or you're watching in the replay. If you are watching the replay, either at majorspoilers.com or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/majorspoilersvideo, here's what you should do. Get in every Friday, 4 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Head over to twitch.tv/majorspoilers and join in the conversation. It was a shorter week with Memorial Day, says Kevin, but still feels good to have a Friday. Yes, I cannot wait to get into a Friday. I've got some family things to do this weekend that I'm not too overly thrilled with, but whatever, you got to do family things to make families happy, right? Speaking of happy, last week I told you, I talked to you about things that really bother me about teaching. Things that upset me, things that make me angry. This week I want to turn those tables just a little bit. And I want to talk about all the things that I love about teaching. Maybe not all the things, because that would be a really long list. First of all, of course, I like sharing information, and I think I can share information, the needed information, in a way that you can understand it. I've written tutorials online for decades. I've done video tutorials. I've written tutorials when I was working in California for Digital Media Net from, 95 to like 2004 or something like that. So I have a big background on writing reviews, writing tutorials, and making things easy for you to understand. So I enjoy that part. I enjoy imparting my knowledge, also my knowledge and experience that I've had from doing video production and web development and all these things over the last 30 years. I enjoy sharing that information with students because I think when you can bring some real-world experiences to the classroom, it may mean a little bit more to students. Of course, the only drawback is you are the student, just like if you're a parent. Your kids never listen to you. Your students never listen to you because they see you every day. But you bring somebody else in, and of course, then that person is the all-knowing, wonderful Oz. But I do enjoy sharing that information with the students and seeing them grow and develop over the course of 4 years or 6 years if they're in a graduate program. But I do like seeing them come into their own as young adults and then go out into the professional world and do some fantastic stuff. I know one of my former students, she went on to work for, I think it was Discovery Networks. She was doing the Alaska Highway Patrol show is what she was working on for years. I don't know what she's working on right now. It seems like all she's working on is a lot of travel, but hey, she's earned that. Look, Malone has joined the chat. How are you? Hope you're having a great Friday. So there is sharing the information. There is seeing these young minds grow and develop and become real professionals and really take to their craft and really excel at everything they do. And sometimes, and these are the best moments. I had this moment a couple of times this past semester when I was teaching a video production class. an editing class specifically, where the light bulb just suddenly turns on, right? So there's a student who was doing a short film. I will refer to the student again a little bit later on. But he was trying to do a short film, and he just was having, he understands basic editing, right? That cutting back and forth and sometimes a J or an L edit will be really, really good. But he didn't understand how you can change the meaning of something with just a simple edit by just doing a simple cutaway. And there was a moment where I was watching his pieces. I'm like, oh, look, you need to move these around. This doesn't work here. What you need is a reaction shot here. And that's the main thing that I try to get across in the editing class, which I think is very hard for a lot of people to understand, is this idea of there's an action and then there is a reaction. One character says something. How does the other character react? Are they angry? Are they upset? What are they going to do? When do you cut to that person reacting, right? And so he wasn't grasping the whole concept of what a cutaway could do or what a cutaway reaction could do. And so I was like, here, let me just show you. So I grabbed a hold of his edit system, and just very quickly, I moved this one shot. I found the shot that I was looking for in his hours and hours and hours. He probably had about 100 hours of raw footage. And I found this one shot really quick because I knew what scene it was, and I figured he probably had a shot like that in there. I dropped that into the timeline. I was like, now watch what happens to the story and to the meaning of this scene just by this one little insert. And so we played it back, and all of a sudden you just saw his face. It just lights up, and he's like, oh, that changes the whole meaning of the scene. That makes this scene work a lot better. And it's just that miracle moment, right? Where suddenly they understand. And you can see that, oh no, they know what's going on. They know how to tell a story. They just needed to be shown this is what we're talking about. And they needed to understand that they need to think further beyond just basic cuts and basic editing to really get to this point of, oh my gosh, look how the narrative has been strengthened or changed in the right direction just by moving this shot a few frames earlier, or putting in this shot instead of this shot, or cutting to this shot instead of this one. And that is super satisfying. I had been in this edit bay with this student for about 3 hours, and it's a edit bay that didn't have a lot of air circulation, so it was getting kind of rank in there, right? For 3 hours of like equipment going on, 2 bodies in a close room. But I walked out of there, instead of being worn down and depressed, I walked out just like, oh my gosh, this is why I enjoy teaching, these light up moments for the students. When they finally understand, when they finally get it, when they finally see what other people are doing, or they finally understand what you're talking about, and then they suddenly are able to go to that next level of learning. And oh man, that is, and I think for anyone who has ever taught, that is one of the most satisfying things that you could ever do. Well, wait. There's probably one thing that may be better than seeing that light flick on, and that's making a student cry. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Mr. Hand, you are the worst teacher in the world. And no, I'm not a Mr. Hand, although I'm very firm. And we've talked about some of that last week with the expectations that I have with students and how they get the grade that they earn. But sometimes making students cry for the right reason is even more fulfilling than seeing them achieve the next success. And I don't mean cry as in cry of upset or they can't handle anything anymore, but I'm talking about the tears that come when you are overcome with joy. When you are at a moment in your life where you are super stressed, and then through an instructor or through a teacher, that relief is there, and suddenly that relief just opens up those floodgates. Now, some of them are not always good reasons or good situations when the crying turns on. I had a student come to me early, about midterm. She hadn't been showing up to class. And she came in and she's like, look, can I just talk to you? And I'm like, yeah, but we have to leave the door open because there's no way that I'm in a closed office with a student, let alone a female student. So she's telling me her situation and how she's really stressed and she's just really she doesn't know what to do, and she's very, very upset all the time. And I'm listening to her, and I'm like, you know what? I hear what you're saying. There are these expectations in the class, but I understand that you may be going through a difficult time. And while I'm glad that you came to me, I don't have the skill set to help you in your emotional and mental state. But fortunately, on our campus university, there is a student health center that deals not only with the body, but the mind, right? And so I said, if you would allow me, I will call them right now and let them know that you are on your way over, and they will have a counselor who can meet with you today, if not in the next few minutes, but at some point today, who can help you through these problems that you're having and maybe get you the help that sounds like you really need. And so sure enough, I called over there and I said, hey, here's this student. She's going through a rough patch. Do you have a counselor that's available to see her right now? And they're like, yes, send her over. And I went to the student, hung up the phone. I said, look, they're ready to see you. Here's the room. Would you like me to walk you over? Because that's the other thing that gets a little weird sometimes when you're dealing with students, is that you do this for them and then they get scared walking across campus and going into a mental health counselor. And so they freak out and they just don't do it. But she's like, no, I appreciate this. And she went off, and that's the last I saw of her for a couple of days. But a couple of days later, I ran into her in the hallway, and she stopped me, and she's like, look, I just wanted to thank you so much for what you did, because it really helped me out. I spent a great deal of time talking with the counselor, figuring things out. I think I'm on the right path. And she began crying because she was just so thankful that there was someone there who could help, who was willing to help. And, some teachers, not saying all teachers, some teachers are just like, I don't want to get into your own personal life. Your personal life is not something that I want to be involved with. And for a lot of the times, I'm kind of that keep your distance kind of thing. I don't want to be your best friend. I'm here to educate you. But if, in this case, this student really needed some help. And it was clear that she was crying now because of the gratitude that she didn't know who else to turn to. And there was somebody who had the answers that she needed. And so that is another moment when you are happy as an instructor, as a teacher, as a professor, whatever you want to call yourself, to help a student and to see that you are doing good. And so that makes you feel good. Even though it's kind of a sad story, it still makes you feel really good. So here's another example. So I said I made two students cry this semester. One, because I helped her out, because she needed the help, and she recognized that this help was beneficial to her. At least I hope. Second was a graduate student, the one that I just mentioned a moment ago, when you see the lights kick on and he's like, oh, I understand. Doing this student film at a graduate level work, and I don't know if you've ever done graduate level work, especially when it comes time for your thesis or your graduate level project, and there is pressure. I mean pressure. You can sing the bars. I won't do it because I'll get banned off of some streaming service. But this same student, he'd got everything shot. I mean, it wasn't the best, right? I mean, he's got to work with what he has access to and the capabilities and everything. But I bet for about 4 weeks, and I told him that he was going to be editing a lot. He was going to basically be camping in the edit bay in order to get his project done on time and at the quality that's expected of graduate work. And there is an expectation that you just don't slide by with so-so work, that you have to show that you really have put all the knowledge that you've gained as a graduate student into this project, and that it is worthy to have a diploma issued from this university given to you. And I know some people just slide by, but for those of you who've done graduate work, you know how stressful it can be. And every couple of days, I'm just writing this student because he's missing shots. He doesn't have things edited. I'm telling him he's got to go back and do reshoots in order to make this piece make sense. And he's got a deadline. He's got a hard deadline of a week before finals to get everything in. Actually, it's a week and a half before finals week to get everything in, because then the committee has to sit down and watch this. The we then have to send all the paperwork through so that he is able to walk and graduate on the graduation day. And I know this kid is stressed out. I can just see it. And it's not like I'm taking glee or joy from him being stressed out, but I know he's working hard. I go back every once in a while, a couple of times a week, to see see who was in the edit bays and who's working and who's doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing. And he's in there and he's got a little hot pot, in there so he can make his noodles and his teas. And he's, just got his laptop open and just, it looks like he's been living in there for a week. But he did some amazing things. He is an international student. And one of the amazing things that I didn't know was that he probably was doing the wrong project for his graduate work. He's really doing more music-related stuff. But he scored in the week. By the time we finished what I would consider the near locked picture, basically just a few more tweaks and some credits, and then the picture's locked. In a week, he not only wrote the entire score for a 15-minute film, but the people that he was working with were on the other side of the world in China. And in the course of 3 days, he wrote, recorded with these singers and other people who were in China, and mixed down the main song for the movie, for the short film that he did. And that's pretty amazing because, doing that normally would take quite a while. So the day comes and you can tell, I'm like, dude, it's getting close to 10 o'clock. You're going to have to show your project at 10 o'clock. We expect to see your project at 10 o'clock. And so I go in, we make sure everything's fired up. And then, me and the 2 other graduate faculty come in and we're sitting down and we have him talk about the project. And then we watch the project. And then we send him out of the room with this idea that we're going to discuss the pros and cons of the work that you've put into it. We're going to determine if this is graduate level work or not, based on what you're turned in, and that will determine whether you graduate or not. In the meantime, go clean up that edit bay because you've been there for a week. It stinks in there. So he goes off and we're having our conversation. And then at the end, and again, this is not being mean. This is not, this is not making people jump through hoops. This is not some kind of weird initiation thing. This is just the way it is. We have to look at your project. It has to be of graduate level work. If it's not, you don't graduate. Or at least you don't graduate in the time that you thought you were going to graduate. You may have to graduate another semester later. That's what happened to me. I was working on my thesis and it wasn't done in time. And so I missed a graduation deadline. So I had to go another semester to get all the rest of my research done and written for my graduate committee to approve on. So me and another graduate faculty, after we're done, we go down to the edit bay where he's cleaning up, and you can just tell he is exhausted. He's probably been up 72 hours straight, just editing and finishing this thing up and getting it ready, right? So I'm like, well, we've got some good news and we've got some bad news. And he's like, okay, what's the bad news? I'm like, well, the bad news is you have until tomorrow to get all of this information, all of your raw footage, all your paperwork, all your final piece and everything to me, because we have to have that by tomorrow. And he's like, okay. And then the good news, and he's like, what's the good news? The good news is you get to graduate on Saturday. And you just see for a moment, he takes a moment to go, oh, just again, this light in his eyes of, oh my gosh, I passed. And then he just starts crying because he's so overcome with joy and happiness that all the work that he put into a project paid off for him. And knowing that when the students are just like, yes, I feel such relief and such accomplishment that I'm crying tears of joy because I have passed, that makes you feel good. I know it's a little weird too, because he's like hugging us. He's like, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's like, you don't need to thank us. You're the one that did all the work. We're just here to guide you and make sure that you're getting this stuff done and that you understand what it means to do this kind of work. But it's those tears of joy that I think is another good thing that makes teaching enjoyable and makes teaching worth it. So that is, I've talked about the bad things that I don't like about teaching. I've talked about the things that I really enjoy about teaching. Next week, I want to talk about what happens when you graduate. And the thing that kind of frustrates me when people graduate And we're going to talk about that next time on Finally Friday. In the meantime, let's jump to some news really quick. And of course, this comes from our very own Majorspoilers.com and our very own Ashley Victoria Robinson. A couple of stories this week. Of course, you've probably all seen the Picard trailer that dropped. I'm not going to play it because, again, YouTube's going to yank it. Paramount, what a bunch of turd holes, right? But did you guys watch the trailer for The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance? Oh my gosh, this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jim Henson at their best, the Jim Henson Company at their best. This is taking us back to the quality of the original Dark Crystal. Yes, I'm sure there's some CGI stuff mixed in here, but this thing is puppets and practical elements all over the set. This has an interesting story to it. Oh, I'm very looking forward to The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, which I think is coming out in August. Yes, beginning August 30th. 10 episodes long. You can binge watch them all over the Labor Day weekend. This thing looks really, really good. I'm very geared up for this as well. What else do we have going on? Let's see. Falcon and Winter Soldier add more alumni. Hollywood Reporter reported that the upcoming Disney's Plus's Falcon and Winter Soldier series would be dipping back into the characters that were created in the MCU. Sam Wilson and the Winter Soldier debuted. Sam Wilson and the Winter Soldier, okay, two different characters, debuted in the Winter Soldier movie. And we're going to see those two characters resurrected in the show. Let's go over to the Skype line and see who's there this week. Hello, who's this?
Hey, it's Bill Schwager, Steven. How are you?
Bill, how are you? It has been far too long since you've called into the show and since we've had a chat. How are things going with you?
Wonderful. I just have one question. How many times have you made Matthew cry?
I've made him get mad at me quite a bit. But he's not a student, so I can't make him cry.
You can try. You can try.
I mean, people are going to... I cry for a lot of reasons. People who are longtime fans know that I cry for a lot of reasons. But I don't know if he's ever cried. I don't know. He might. He may not cry at all. He may have a heart of stone for all we know, but I doubt it. I'm sure he cries tears every time he drives home at night or something like that. What's on your mind this week, Bill?
Oh, nothing. I have not called in for a while. You guys did the Twitch switch over, and 2 weeks ago I had rotator cuff surgery. So I've been down a little bit, but healing nicely. I've got a nice Action Star sling on, so I'm getting back into fighting trim. Well,
that's good. That's good to know. Have you had any big things going on your writing side? How goes your latest book?
No, it's just I'm still out on on submission, just waiting to hear back from different publishers, collecting a rejection here and there, but still alive, still going strong.
Now you have an agent, correct?
Correct.
And your agent does a really good job of working for you and is submitting it to the right places? Okay, because I listened to... Have you listened to the Cargill podcast where he's got like tips on writing? Have you been listening to that one?
No, what is it?
Let me look it up real quick. It's C. Robert Cargill, who is the one half of the writing team of the Doctor Strange movie.
Oh.
But he has been doing this podcast with, I forget what the guy's last name is. David Chin, I think is his name. And it is called, let me find it here. I've got so many episodes that have not been played. It comes out weekly. But he's just in a very short amount of time, in like 15, 20 minutes, they pick a topic and they talk about some aspect of writing and the creative process. It's a little bit more geared towards script writing because that's what he does. Let me see if I can find it. Nope, not that one. Not that one. But one of the more recent ones that they talked about was making sure that your agent is actually doing work for you. Because at one point, Cargill is talking about how his agent said that the stuff was going out and he was going to send it to somebody who thought that this story was perfect, and they were submitting it to the wrong desk at the publisher. And the publisher is just like, why are you submitting stuff here? This makes no sense. And just making, according to Cargill, kind of feel like a fool. And so he fired his agent and found somebody much better. Man, what is the name of the podcast? I've got so many.
Mine is pretty great, and I can. She makes sure to forward me all the rejections, so I know exactly what's going on. I know exactly who's saying no, and they are the right people at the right places. But no, I've been very happy. It's just some of these things take time, and sometimes there are things that are out of your control, and sometimes the market shifts beneath you. You know, it's tricky. It's tricky sometimes, but no, she's been taking pretty good care of me. So
that's great.
Anxiously waiting on pins and needles to get any sort of word for the latest thing. But all you can do, like I've said for years, is just keep your head down and start working on the next thing.
I need to get back to that. I need to get back to that. My son has a lot of like soccer stuff this summer, and so while I'm sitting in the car, it's just going to be cracking that laptop back open and getting a lot of stuff written.
Yeah, good. I'm just trying to get back into it myself, because after finishing the last book, sending it off to my agent, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off. And then the shoulder stuff happened, so I'm like, ugh. So literally this week was the first week I sort of, got back into it.
Yeah.
It was also the first week I could get my hand up to the keyboard without wincing. So
there you go.
But I'm getting back into it.
So the podcast is Right Along with David and Cargill.
All right, I will check that out.
WRITE, Right Along with David and Cargill. And then there is one from the Night Vale guys that I find very fascinating. They're more along the lines of helping you be more creative in your writing. And that is a podcast called Start With This.
Oh.
So those are a couple you might want to check out.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely check out the Ride Along with David and Cargill. That one is really good. I enjoy that one immensely.
Absolutely. Adding it to the queue.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, just calling to wish you guys a happy weekend over there at Major Spoilers HQ.
All right, Bill, you have a great weekend as well, and we will talk again really soon, okay?
You bet. Take care.
All right, bye-bye. Before we end this week, I want to show you something here. Here is a little lens. I don't know how I got onto this YouTube algorithm, but suddenly all these photographers and videographers are talking about antique lenses or vintage lenses. I guess these aren't antique yet, but vintage lenses. And talking about some of the pros and cons of a vintage lens compared to the new lenses that you get on your cameras today. And one of the big ones that I kind of like is that the coatings on these lenses are much different than the coatings that are on lenses today. A lot of lenses today have coatings on them to reduce lens flare. And while I don't intentionally try to add lens flare to a photograph or to my videos, sometimes a really nice anamorphic lens flare or a really nice sun hit in the lens looks right at the appropriate moment. And you don't want something that's just a big blurred white ball. You want something that has some style and panache. So I went out and I picked up for like $40 what is this? This is a 1960s Takumar 50 millimeter 1.4 f-stop. I mean, it's got a shallow f-stop. Makes it super hard to focus. But I picked this up and it came in a week or two ago. This is just a fascinating lens. I think I'm going to try to get some more. And I'm just amazed at some of the photos that you can take with this. So let me just show you one. Here is this one that I took just a little bit ago before the show. And I just want to show you the shallow depth of field that is on this. First of all, this is my current lens. So first of all, here are a couple of lenses. This one is my 5D Mark II with a 50 millimeter macro lens on it. It's fairly light. This lens is kind of plasticky, but it's really light, really cheap. This one is the 5D Mark III with a stock lens on it, a 24 to 105. This thing is a heavy beast. It weighs a ton with this lens. This 50 millimeter, I think it's all metal, so it weighs a little bit more than this 50 millimeter macro lens. But because this f-stop is so wide open, the depth of field is really shallow. So I'm focusing on the numbers here on the ring. But you can see the keyboard right behind us is out of focus. And if we zoom in here, let me turn this close up. You can see that the back half of the lens is also completely out of focus in this. This is I'm just kind of blown away by this lens. And you can see as we get down here, the depth of field is starting to be thrown off on this thing. The other one is the bokeh or the bokeh. This has a really weird blurring. You know, here's a little bokeh effect back here. And of course, you're going to have a more rounded bokeh here because of the fact that the iris is wide open. But then you got this weird blurry stuff that's going on too with the bokeh and the depth of field too. This is just a really fascinating lens, and I'm really getting a kick out of it. I've got a couple more. I didn't bring them in. I took some of my oldest son out playing soccer the other day and got a nice sun lens flare on there, and it really looks good. Really looks nice and golden. This one has, I noticed, tends to have a little bit warmer tone to it than the stock Canon lens, and Canons already have a warmer tone to them. But I wanted to share that with you guys. I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up this week. We talked a little bit of news. We talked about teaching. We talked about this new lens that came in. I'm going to have some other cool things to talk about in the weeks to come, including some of the changes that have happened here on this live show, as well as a bunch of things that we are doing at Majorspoilers.com. Of course, if you are a Major Spoilers Patreon member at the $10 level and higher, or you're a VIP at the gold level and higher, you have access to a monthly live chat where myself and other members of the Major Spoilers team who are available sit down and have a conversation with you about what we're doing behind the scenes, some directions that we're doing, allowing you to ask us questions directly about what's going on at Major Spoilers, because we look at you as our investors, as people who are making everything here happen. And if you're one of those VIP or gold members or Patreon members at the gold level and higher, go back and watch the VIP live stream from, is it May? Is it the May live stream? Yeah. Go back and look at the May live stream that we did on the 17th of May and just look at all the things that we have coming your way over the next couple of months. One of them's already rolled out in a super secret way, and some of those people are listening to this show right now. I suppose if you know how to look in show notes and things, you can find some other sources of information. We will start making it more public over the next couple of weeks, but it's a good place for people to hang out and just do some fun things together. Plus more shows and more things that we have going on all the time. Some reasonings why things like Critical Hit are going through a couple of changes over the next, probably from now forward, as people become very busy in their schedules. But you can find out that information when you become a member at patreon.com/majorspoilers at the $10 level and higher. And you know what? If you can't do the $10, that's fine. If you could, we don't want you to contribute anything that you cannot afford to do. We understand times are tight. But if you can kick in $1 a month, $12 a year, or $5, what is that? $60 for the year. It would certainly help us. It would help us continue shows like this. It would help us bring more people in to write more at Majorspoilers.com. It would help us to hire more people who can get more shows out to you in a more timely fashion beyond the, stuff that we're doing weekly anyway. You can find out more. Just go and check it out. Go see what we have to offer. Look at some of the rewards. Look at what we're trying to do. Patreon.com/majorspoilers. Thank you, awesome people, for joining us in the chat this week. I don't know who else showed up. It looked like Jimmy and Kevin and Billy are all there. So thank you guys for showing up, with probably some other people who were very quiet. But we'll be back next week when it's finally Friday, and we'll talk about things, and I'll talk about my third chapter of the teaching, things that you should be doing after you graduate from a teacher's perspective. All that and more next week. Until then, take care, be nice to one another, be nice to yourself, and have a fun, relaxing weekend. Speaking of gold members, there's some gold members right there. You know, if you're a gold member, you get your name in those credits. Gold members and higher. John and Josh and Joshua, Kenneth, KVII. I don't think that's Roman numerals. Quinn and Red and Robert and Russ and Scott. Some awesome people. Thank you all for your contributions. Thank you all for your support. We really, 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 really do appreciate it.